Hello, welcome to the LCC Monthly Luncheon. I am Peter Guzman, President of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. Today we're bringing it to you live broadcast, so bear with us, but I'm glad you're with us. We are going to start, as we always do, with our pledge. Today we have our great friend from the SBA, Saul Ramos. Saul?
Thank you, Peter. The right hand over your heart, begin. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So like I said, we're doing this broadcast to you because we at the Latin Chamber of Commerce, we understand that important topics still need to come to you. I know that many of you are going through a critical moment right now, our small business community and our strip workers and everybody that's doing the hotels and casinos. We know what's going on right now, but we must continue. We must fight. We must be exactly who we are. We've been through these type of challenges before, and we always come out stronger and better for it, and I have no doubt that that'll happen again today. When this is over, we will be stronger, we will be better, and we will be united. That is who we are. That is who Nevada is. I'm just happy that we're bringing subjects that may or may not always agree with the Latin Chamber of Commerce. That's not what matters to us. What matters to us is bringing topics that matter to you. Today is no different. The subject of drug pricing and pharmaceuticals, everybody's talking about it, and so we must bring it to you, and that's what we've done here today. So with that, I'm honored to start off with some great information from our SBA. As we know, the SBA is in the thick of this crisis that's going on, and we must help our small business. So today we have our great friends, Saul Ramos and Joe Amato. Joe, come on up.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm Joe Amato. I'm the District Director for the Small Business Administration for the state of Nevada. With me today is Saul Ramos, my Deputy Director, and we're here to give you the latest information on what the U.S. Small Business Administration is doing to help the small businesses in this community. You know, it is a tough time. We are in the thick of it right now, and as Peter Guzman has said, we have amazing partners like the Latin Chamber that are bringing information out to the small business population every day. So no matter how you're affected, whether you're affected by the current 30-day moratorium on business that has been invoked by the governor, or that your business has been shut out because of the casinos, or because of anything else that's gone on because of coronavirus at this point. We are here to help. Believe it, read my lips. We are here as the federal government to help you. And the Small Business Administration and their disaster loan program is in the forefront of assisting small businesses. So I'll give you this sort of the most important facts. If you're a business that's either been shut down, shuttered, or reduced in any way, shape, or form by what is going on with the impact of coronavirus, we are here to help. The main instrument that we're using to assist businesses right now is through our disaster loan program. It has been fully funded. The state of Nevada has been approved for disaster loan assistance since Monday this week, and the applications online are roaring in. The application process is tedious. And what we've been doing is trying to educate as best possible the small businesses that are out there, the business owners, to how you go through the application process. And at the end of the day, it's here to help you. What we're looking at is providing up to $2 million per business based on need, what your financial need is over the next 6 to possibly 12 months. It's not that we're believing that the effect of this will be more than hopefully a couple of weeks. But the way the SBA has looked at this is that through other disaster programs that they've run in the past, which are mostly for natural disasters, we're talking tornadoes and floods and hurricanes, an economic disaster is a completely different game. And it's a new game that we're taking on for your benefit. And we're taking on with partners like the Latin Chamber to get that information out to you. So up to $2 million will be available per business. Not to say that your business will need more than $100,000 to stay afloat for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks and for the next year until things stabilize, because who knows how long it will take for us to recover. Up to $2 million per business. The loan terms are amazing. They're either 15 years or 30 years. So you look at it more as a mortgage than it is just a short-term loan to get you through an interim process. And the fixed rates are great too. They're 3.75% if you're a for-profit business. And during disaster loans, Nonprofits are also available. If you're a 501c3 or a 501c-, you will also be able to borrow up to those same amount of money for 2.25%, or I'm sorry, 2.75% interest fixed rate for the term that they devise for you. And again, the term could be 15 to 30 years. Right now, what we're trying to do is take as many applications online as possible. What I'm doing with most of the small businesses, anyone that's out there, we're giving out information so that you can contact us. Our Nevada District Office number is 702-388-6611. And believe it or not, I'm even giving my personal email out to every small business in the state of Nevada, especially in Las Vegas and especially in Clark County. It's joseph.amato, A-M-A-T-O, @sba.gov. If you have a concern, if you have a question, do not hesitate to email me. I'm trying to get back emails within 3 to 5 hours because, as you can tell, my schedule is extremely full. But nothing that we're doing, whether it's at the district office with my assistants, with the assistance of my great staff and Saul as my deputy, we are here every minute of every day to help us through this crisis. We are all hoping and praying that it's a short-term crisis, but still, the economic impact could be going on for months, possibly up to a year. And the SBA is here to support you for up to 12 months to get you to the point where you can be basically economically solvent and efficient again. So again, the SBA is here to help you. If I have forgotten, it's sba.gov/disaster. That's how you do your online application. Again, sba.gov/disaster. You get the online application. It's probably a 3 to 4 hour process. It's very tedious, but at the end of the day, the money that you need to keep your business afloat will be there for you. We are the SBA and we are here to help. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Give it to us in Spanish.
Para información en español pueden usar el sitio de internet de sba.gov/disaster. Otra vez, para información en español pueden usar el sitio de internet sba.gov/disaster.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Did you need it?
Thank you so much for that information. We need that for our small business community. It is the engine that drives not only our community but our country. And we have to stand shoulder to shoulder, and the Latin Chamber will stand shoulder to shoulder with our small business community. So with that, we're going to keep it moving. We got an incredible woman here with an incredible story. Honored to have her. Honored to also have, and I know he's going to get introduced in a little while, but I want to mention his name, the Honorable former Congressman Dr. Joe Heck, great friend of this chamber, great friend. One of the reasons why we have a charter school upstairs is because of the advocacy and the hard work that Dr. Joe Heck helped us with, and we're honored to have that. So with that, I am now going to step aside and introduce Mara Bivens. Mara, come on up.
Thank you so much. All right. I wish that I could shake every one of your hands today. I really do. I would like to start off by thanking everyone who is a part of today. Their talent and their creative thinking outside of the box allowed us to present really important information in a time where we can't gather together. And today's topic is very important because healthcare remains a key cost driver for employers. And today, you'll get ideas for an effective wellness program to help facilitate long-term benefits for your company. And this is important for your employees who care about access to innovative treatments at affordable prices. So my name is Mara Bivens, and I want to thank you for having me today. I have been living with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer for 10 years now. Now, 2 years before that, I was diagnosed with stage 2B breast cancer, and I thought I knew a lot about breast cancer. I owned a nail salon outside of Boston, and unfortunately, I saw a lot of people going through breast cancer treatments. But until I was diagnosed with it, I didn't realize how much I didn't know about it. I didn't know that there are different kinds of breast cancer. I didn't know that in a tumor, You could have estrogen receptors, progesterone receptors, or a protein called HER2. And I didn't know that you could have a combination of any of those in your tumor. So you could be considered single positive, double positive, or triple positive. Now, what I got diagnosed with was triple negative breast cancer. So that meant that my tumor didn't have any of those factors in it. And it is a less common form of breast cancer. It makes up 10 to 15% of all the breast cancers. But it affects more young people, African Americans, Hispanic, and ones with a gene mutation called BRAC. It's almost like they were telling me that they knew what triple negative wasn't, and they didn't know what triple negative was. So that makes triple negative a little bit more difficult to treat, because we can't treat it alongside with the medicines and the blockers alongside of chemotherapy. My only option was chemotherapy. Now, thank God I had a complete response to my chemotherapy, my radiation and surgery, and I thought I was done. So I was very surprised. Less than a year later, during a routine chest x-ray, we found out that my breast cancer was back, and this time it had metastasized to my lungs. I was an optimistic person. I now had triple negative breast cancer metastasized in my lungs, and I said to my oncologist, well, I beat it before, I can beat it again. And she actually cried when she had to tell me, no, I did not beat it before, and no, I was not going to beat it this time. I had to do more research in order to get into a clinical trial, and that's when I found out that metastatic breast cancer does not have a cure. And when I went for a second opinion, the doctor told me not to come down to Houston, that there was nothing more he could do for me there, that I should live out the projected 12 to 18 months that I had left with my kids. My kids at that point were 4, 7, and 11. So that's what I did. For that year, we lived hard. We all jumped off the swimming pool's diving board at the public pool. I got them up in the middle of the night to go play in the park. And I over-enthusiastically volunteered for every PTA opportunity. But I couldn't keep that up. The side effects from the chemotherapy were just devastating to me physically and mentally. It got so bad that I begged my oncologist for a break, mostly for a mental break, more than the physical break. And that's when she told me about Las Vegas had just received our own CyberKnife radiation machine. Previously, she was sending patients to California for the treatment, and she knew I was adamant about staying home, right here in Las Vegas for my treatment. It was a really hard choice. My husband and I had to make the decision, do we want to stop treating my body systematically with chemo and switch to targeted, just radiating my lungs? It was a tough choice that we made, but we chose the right one. After 6 treatments of the CyberKnife, I had no evidence of disease in my body again. Now, this surprised everyone. This is not what we were going for. Excuse me. I am considered an exceptional responder because we thought that this would just buy me more time. We didn't know it would totally eradicate the cancer for that time. So I asked the doctor, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Do I have cancer? Do I not have cancer? What is happening here? And she said to me, you are still stage 4, triple negative, metastasized to your lungs, but no evidence of disease. We are getting you as strong as you can for your next round. So I took that seriously. And as soon as I got my strength back, I went back to the martial arts studio with my kids. And my strength did come back, and I got stronger and stronger. I was already a first-degree black belt, So with time, I tested for my second-degree black belt. There was no miraculous healing. It's not like overnight, all of a sudden, I was healed. No, it was step by step. Time went on. I tested for my third-degree black belt, and that was 6 years ago. And then just recently, 2 weeks ago, I tested for my fourth-degree black belt. I am confident, and I would love to stand in front of you today and say I am a fourth degree, but I have not gotten the results yet, and that should be coming soon. But in those 9 years, I call them my bonus years now. In those 9 years, my kids are now 14, 17, and 20. And I have lived 9 full, rich, blessed years. I have seen graduations. I have seen first communions. I've seen my kids make their confirmations. I have taught them to drive. I have seen each one of them achieve their third-degree black belts in Taekwondo. I've seen them try new sports, try new instruments. I've seen concerts. My husband and I facilitate marriage classes at our church, and this year we're going to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. God has blessed me abundantly. I don't know my medical future, but as I said, I'm a very optimistic person. And because of innovations, I am confident that whatever my medical future holds, that I can still continue to live a rich, full life. Thank you so much. And that's why this topic is really, really important to me. And I am very excited to introduce former Congressman Dr. Joe Heck. And I'm really interested to hear what he has to say. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maura. Thank you. Well, thanks, Maura, for the personal courage to relate that very touching story. And God bless you for the 9 bonus years that you have had. Many more, I'm hopeful. I also want to thank Peter and the Latin Chamber for being adaptive and innovative and changing this luncheon presentation from a live performance to this streaming video, because the topic we're talking about today is critically important. It's about access to health care and the ever-increasing cost of pharmaceuticals and the impact that it has on businesses, both large and small. So I came to Nevada almost 30 years ago as an emergency department physician, worked in Sunrise Hospital as well as University Medical Center. You know, we say emergency medicine docs are on the front lines of healthcare, and certainly I saw the impact on patients and their well-being when they couldn't afford to take their medications, right? So they couldn't afford to fill their prescriptions, were non-compliant with the course of therapy that their physician prescribed, and eventually they wind up in the hospital emergency department because their diabetes is out of control, their high blood pressure is out of control, their heart rate is up too high. And so that's why this is critically important to me as well as a practicing physician. I was fortunate to have served time in the Nevada State Senate as well as the House of Representatives, where I concentrated on healthcare policy. And post-elected office, continue to focus my efforts on enacting meaningful healthcare reform that will help increase access, increase quality, while decreasing costs. So the issue we're talking about today is the cost of pharmaceutical drugs, specifically the cost to your employees, as well as the cost to your bottom line as the employer providing a benefit to your employees. You know, there's been a lot of talk lately about healthcare pricing and transparency all across the board, whether it's the cost of a procedure in a hospital or the cost of a prescription at a pharmacy. But probably nowhere is transparency more important than right now when we talk about pharmaceuticals. It is a complex interplay with terms that are very confusing. We talk about things like maximum allowable cost, the average wholesale cost, the wholesale acquisition cost, the usual and customary cost, the average manufacturer price, the average sale price. It's no wonder that consumers, patients, and employers through their health insurance have a hard time understanding what the true cost of a prescription is to their employee. So as this slide shows, there's also a complex interplay through a bunch of different players in the healthcare market. When we talk about prescription drugs and the role of pharmacy rebates, which some say are one of the drivers through increasing cost, we see that there's a mix of people and organizations. You, the employer, who's providing the benefit, the actual insurer who's underwriting that benefit, the pharmacy where they go to get their drug, the manufacturer who makes the drug, the wholesaler who sells the drug between the manufacturer and the pharmacy, and the middleman, the pharmacy benefit manager. The pharmacy benefit manager is an organization that is used by many employers or insurers to manage their pharmacy benefit. Kind of a third party who's serving as the middleman to manage the pharmacy benefit. And so some have talked about the cost of rebates in overall pharmaceutical pricing and the role of this pharmacy benefit manager. So what are rebates? Well, rebates are basically an amount of money paid by a manufacturer to the pharmacy benefit manager, or in some cases to the insurer. A lot of times this rebate is paid in order to get preferential treatment or preferential placement on that insurer's formulary plan. So it's to make sure that their drug is available to your employees or their patients. So what does that mean? Well, you would think that if the PBM, the pharmacy benefit manager, was getting money back from the drug manufacturer in order to get that drug on your formulary, that cost savings would be passed on to you through lower insurance premiums, or it would be passed on to your employee through a lower copay. However, that's not necessarily the case. What we find is that pharmacy benefit managers are pocketing most of the rebate money. And in some cases, the higher the list price, the higher the rebate, so there's almost a perverse incentive for pharmacy benefit managers to want to keep higher cost drugs on the formulary. And if your insurance to your employee works on a coinsurance where they're paying a percentage of the list price as their copay, the higher the list price, the higher they're out of pocket. So that's one of the issues that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail as we move through this presentation. And it's also, we'll talk about some of the legislation that was attempted in the last Nevada legislative session, as well as some of the federal legislation that's currently pending in order to address this issue. Now, another area that leads to this lack of transparency in pricing is what's called spread pricing. So this is where the pharmacy benefit manager actually charges the insurer more than what they're paying the pharmacy to dispense that prescription. So let's say, for example, the pharmacy buys a drug from the wholesaler at $10. The patient goes in to buy that prescription and the cost is $12. The PBM pays the pharmacy $12. So the pharmacy makes $2. But then the PBM charges your insurer $20, more than they're actually paying the pharmacy. And they pocket the $8. All of these things tend to drive up the cost for pharmaceuticals to patients. And so we need to look at what meaningful policies can be enacted. You know, healthcare spending is about 16 to 17% of the gross domestic product in this country. When you look at pharmaceuticals, it's about 15% of all healthcare spending is spent on pharmacy. I average about $1,200 per person per year on pharmaceuticals. Almost $450 billion a year are spent in the United States on drugs. So if we want to bring down costs, if we want to make sure that patients can continue to get the medications that they need to stay healthy, to continue to be a productive member of the workforce, then we have to do all that we can from a meaningful public policy perspective to reverse these perverse incentives in order to make sure that more of the savings are going to you as the employer through lower premiums and to your employees through lower copays at the pharmacy counter. So we'll talk more about this as the presentation progresses. I'm going to now turn it back to Maura to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am very excited to introduce Senior Fellow in Business Economics, Wayne Weingarten. Hello, Wayne.
Hi, I wish I could be there in person, but it's nice to be here. Hello?
Oh, it's very good to see you, at least. At least we can see you, and it's all good.
So Wade, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and then go ahead with your presentation on biosimilars.
Oh, absolutely. So, very, very quick background. I'm a senior fellow with the Pacific Research Institute, as well as the director for our Center for Medical Economics and Innovation. And our goal at this center is really to explore how the pharmaceutical industry, the biopharmaceutical industry, how can we make those work more efficiently so we can have the dual goals of continued innovation, right? So we can continue to have better treatments for cancer and Alzheimer's and all these other horrible diseases, as well as promote affordability. And I think that one concept is the most important thing to continue to remember when we're talking about this issue. We need a pharmaceutical system that can deliver both continued innovation as well as continued affordability. And one of the missing ingredients when you actually begin to dig down into the problems of our current system is within a form of drugs that are known as biologics. And just to very briefly give a sense, and I think there's a danger here having an economist teach you about pharmaceutical and biology, but we have two different classes of medicines. Small molecule kind of chemical compounds, that's the traditional medicine that we purchase from CVS or Walgreens. And then we have a newer class of medicines called biologics. In the traditional space, we have a very kind of healthy environment where there's been a lot of innovation, right? A lot of cures and treatments have come along, as well as broad affordability. Think of it this way, 90% of the drugs sold over the counter are generics. 95% of those are sold for $20 or less. So we have a very healthy ecosystem when you talk about those traditional small molecule medicines. Where most of the cost is and lots of the affordability problems arise is with these new biologics. These are the medicines that have helped expand the treatment for cancer and increase our survival rate. They address issues like autoimmune diseases like Crohn's disease and arthritis. So there's a lot of value that these medicines are providing. But lots of the innovation has happened a while ago. These compounds have had their opportunity to recoup the cost of capital. And that's essential. We need the innovators to have that opportunity to recoup their costs. But the way the system is supposed to work, the way it's actually working in the EU for biologics, and the way it works here for the small molecule medicines is that in the case of small molecules, you have those generics come in and they compete. In the biologic space, those competitors are known as biosimilars, right? They're lower cost versions that are just as efficacious as the originator product, but in the case of biologics, because it's a very complicated drug, right? These are drugs that are derived from biological processes. It's a very long, complicated process. They're still expensive, but biosimilars can offer a discount of up to 30 to 40%. So you have significant savings that employers can be getting, patients can be getting, the federal government, state government, all across the board. You can be getting a 30 to 40% discount off of the most expensive drugs. And remember, like most things in healthcare, the costs are concentrated, right? There's lots of ways of talking about it, but I guess one stat I like, they talk about the top 50 drugs account for 40% of the expenditure. So a very small number of the total drugs available account for 40% of the total expenditures. And these drugs are, to a large extent, biologics. So getting a healthy biosimilars market up and running is a very important contribution. It's not a panacea, it won't solve everything, but it's a very important part of the solution to bring down overall kind of that affordability problem that far too many patients are having to deal with, far too many employers have to deal with. And some of the reforms that are necessary are exactly just what Congressman Heck was just talking about, dealing with that overly complicated pricing structure so that you can actually get the discounts to the patients, right? 100% of the discounts should go to the patients. Providers need to have an incentive to prescribed the just as efficacious, lower cost biosimilar rather than a biologic when, in effect, it's simply a higher cost medicine that provides the same benefit. And so we need to change how those formularies are designed, both through legislation in the federal government, but also employers should be pushing their insurers to change and actually create a separate tier for biosimilars where you have lower copays, for instance, or lower co-insurance, right? Copay is the amount you have to pay when it's a set fee you have to pay when you purchase a drug. Co-insurance is a percentage of the total costs, and normally those go together and make up the out-of-pocket cost that patients have to bear. If we give those patients lower copays and lower co-insurance, we're actually incenting a solution that will actually help make the drugs more affordable to patients, to employers, and to federal government. So we need these types of policy changes to spur the biosimilar market, because in Europe, where there's a much more developed number of biosimilars approved, about 3 times the amount, and in many of the markets you're talking about 60, 70, 100% is biosimilars. In the US, we only have 9 drug classes where biosimilars have been approved. They're only competing in 4, and in total, it's about 1% of the volume. So whereas in the generic market, we have lots of, in the small molecule market, we have lots of competitors. In the EU, they're getting a lot more biosimilar competition. It works, but we're not seeing that yet in the US. That's why we need those policy changes. A lot of the research that we've been doing at the center have been trying to value how much does that really work. And so we've gone through and looked at the actual volume data, the actual pricing data, and overall, just in those 9 drug classes, we could be annually saving $7 billion a year if biosimilars were to obtain a 75% market share, which, given what's happening in the EU, given what's happening in the generic market, is completely reasonable. So for employers, you have about $3 billion worth of savings, again, annual savings. And I think those savings potential demonstrate why the policy reforms that we were just talking about, and can talk to much more later, are so important. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about that.
Thank you so much, Wayne. That was, wow, that was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot of, it was a lot of really good information. I so wish that we could open up the questions to the audience, but since that's not possible today, I do have some prepared questions for you. The first one, Wayne, how do biosimilars increase competition in the healthcare market? And is increased competition a positive thing for patients and employers?
Competition is a big part of the solution. As I had mentioned, in terms of the small molecule market, right, generics, that competition has kept down prices. That's the way, the competition is the way we balance out innovation and affordability, because otherwise you're going to reduce the incentive to continue to create new drugs. So biosimilars are absolutely essential, and that competition is absolutely essential for creating that healthy kind of pharmaceutical market where we keep overall healthcare spending in check, because people are adherent to their medicines and are healthier because of it. It's the one tried and true method that we found.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Wayne.
And I think that's a great point, Wayne. You know, the simple analogy that most of our folks that are listening would probably understand. A pharmaceutical industry spends an inordinate amount of money actually research and developing new drugs, right? Some estimate that it could take $1 billion to get a drug from a concept to actually marketing. And for every one that makes it to market, there's probably 10 to 15 that don't, but they still spent that money trying to develop those drugs, right? And so that's why they get patent protection for their new drugs. For a certain period of time, only they can produce that drug in order to help them recoup the cost of developing the drug so that they'll continue to innovate and look for new treatments and new cures. But once that patent is up, we then get the flood of the generics, right? Which is that same drug which helps drive down the costs. So the drug that cost you by brand name $100 today costs you $10 tomorrow when it comes off patent. And that's what we're trying to do in the biologic sphere. Right, so it's a name drug versus a generic. Now we want to look at a biologic going to a biosimilar to open up those same opportunities. And biologics are some of the most expensive drugs out there. I mean, courses of therapy are $60,000 or $70,000. And so being able to get a discount where you're able to bring that cost still high, but bring it down to $20,000 or $30,000 with a comparable biosimilar is going to be critical in order for our small businesses to continue to provide insurance, right? Because that savings, when passed on to you, should mean lower premiums that you're paying, and to our individual employees and to our patients as a physician, who then will be able to afford those drugs and be more compliant with their course of therapy.
So what are some policies at both the federal and the state level that have already worked or would work if implemented to increase access to biosimilars?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, Nevada really leaned forward in the last legislative session in trying to increase transparency and looking at policies that would have a positive impact on all Nevadans. So, for instance, there was one bill that was introduced, AB 141, which actually prevented or stopped the prohibition, right, from a pharmacist being able to tell a patient that there was a lower cost alternative to the prescription that they had, right? So you would think that it would make sense, right? I go in with a prescription, the pharmacist sees it, the pharmacist knows what insurance plan I'm on, he knows what the cost of the drug is. If there was a similar drug that would cost me less, you would think the pharmacist would be able to recommend that. Not that he could or she could prescribe it, but recommend it. And then I could go to my physician and say, hey, what about this other drug? The concern was that the pharmacist would get, there would be retribution against the pharmacist by pharmacy benefit managers if they recommended lower cost drugs. So Nevada passed that legislation now saying that it's okay for pharmacists to be able to recommend lower cost drugs. In fact, in some cases, there would be a drug where it would be cheaper to actually pay cash than to use your insurance benefit, right? Your insurance copay was $20, right? But the generic version of the drug was $5. So why not just pay cash? Pharmacists were prevented from being able to tell you that. So that's one area where we stepped forward. Another bill that was introduced by Senator Cancella, who's been a leader in this area, was SB 276. And this would have required that all rebates given by a manufacturer to a pharmacy benefit manager would have had to be passed on to the insurer, or more importantly, to the patient. So 100% of that rebate should ultimately make it into the pocket of the person who's getting the prescription. That would have been a game changer. Unfortunately, that bill did not get through the legislative session, but it did result in the formation of an interim study committee taking place now before the next session begins in February of next year to look at this very issue and to come back with some alternatives. Another bill introduced by Senator Cancella, which was SB 378, changes the responsibility of the PBM, the pharmacy benefit manager, their primary responsibility from the insurer to really the patient, right? So there was this, what's called the fiduciary responsibility between the pharmacy benefit manager and the insurer. Fiduciary duty means that they had to work in the best interest of the insurer. Well, we really think they should be working in the best interest of the patient, of the person who actually needs to take the drug. And so this bill is a step forward, making sure that pharmacy benefit managers are taking the patient's needs and concerns into consideration, not necessarily the insurers. Now, at the federal level, the Trump administration has put forward their plan to try to decrease drug costs, and that's called the America Patients First Lower Prescription Drug Cost Plan. It was issued last May. That has many different proposals in it, some of which address this issue with rebates, some looking at spread pricing, all of them looking at trying to increase competition and increasing transparency. There have been 32 individual bills introduced in the 116th Congress between the House and the Senate trying to address this issue of prescription drug costs. So far, only one has passed the House. That was House Resolution 3. And that one actually requires that rebates provided by pharmacy benefit managers make it into the pockets of patients. So we hope that the Senate would take this up and that we actually see some relief. So these are some of the methods, some of the legislative priorities that are being looked at, not just here in Nevada, but back in Washington, D.C.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Now, how do prescription drug rebates impact access to biosimilars and other drugs, for that matter?
Well, one of the problems with prescription rebates, the term sounds so wonderful, right? Rebate. It sounds like it should be making things cheaper. But the problem is that, and exactly the Congressman was explaining, the rebates don't make it into the pockets of patients. And in fact, often the way the system works, the rebate benefits the PBM, and then the PBM gives a lot of the savings to the insurer, which lowers premiums overall, but the patients who are purchasing the drugs, often these are the most expensive drugs, and their payments, their co-insurance, is based on the list price, that high price the Congressman was talking about earlier, not the net price, that price minus the rebate. So what's happening is these rebates are going into the pockets of PBMs. A lot of them are going to the insurer, that lowers the overall premium costs, but the patient who's taking the drug, the one who's sickest, is funding all of this through excessive costs that are being imposed on their co-insurance. And that's the exact opposite of the way insurance is supposed to work, where those who are sickest are being kind of supported because that's the risk that we're concerned about. So that whole idea of collapsing the rebate, getting out of that net rebate system, getting out of the rebate system to a net price system, is one of the most effective ways not only to encourage biosimilars, but to improve the way drugs are priced and how those prices are impacting patients across the board.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical point that you bring up, Wayne, right? So when you, as a former small business owner, right, I provided insurance benefits to my employees. And, I would see my premiums, and I'm sure most of you have seen your premiums increase from year to year. And so the question is, how can we work as employers to bring down our costs? Right? We're all concerned about our bottom line. We want to decrease our costs so that we can remain sustainable and profitable, especially in economic downturns like we're seeing now. And so that's why one of the other public policy discussions is over this concept of co-insurance versus co-payments, and Wayne alluded to that, right? So co-insurance is a percentage of the list price. So the higher the price, the higher the out-of-pocket expense to the employee, to the patient. If we switch more to a co-payment, which goes in tiers, it's a fixed amount, regardless of the price of the drug, that the patient or the employee would pay based on what tier that drug is placed in. So as a $100 drug, name brand might have a $20 co-pay, as opposed to a 20 or 30% co-insurance, right? And so as the drug price goes up, the co-payment stays relatively the same when it's based on a tiered approach. And again, we want to make sure that our employees are getting their prescriptions filled, that they're taking their medications, because that's the best way to ensure that they stay healthy. And when they're healthy, they show up to work and they help us be successful.
So what if we eliminated rebates altogether? If we just got rid of that, would that lower the cost of drugs across the board?
Well, I'll let the economist take a crack at that one first.
You would eventually. I mean, there's a lot of things that would happen. Right? You have a very dynamic situation, but most importantly, what you would now have is a functioning market. Right? Markets can't function when there's so many different prices. Right? There's different disincentives come about. But what you're now going to have is one price where all of the parties are working in the interest of the patient, and you're also going to have the incentive to use. In the biologics market, you can have the incentive to use the biosimilar, not the innovator originator. That's going to lower prices. So you're going to have, just like in any traditional market, an incentive towards lower and lower prices, and companies are going to have to compete with each other on prices. So those functions are all going to work to lower prices, and yes, it will improve affordability, and most importantly, you're going to stop a lot of these really inequitable transfers where people are paying higher costs than they should because of the shell games that are enabled. So that complexity in and of itself is problematic and a benefit of getting rid of the whole rebating system.
I'm sorry. Would eliminating rebates actually increase access to biosimilars?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Right now what you have is, especially when you look across the portfolio, the rebates can be used as a means to effectively lock out the biosimilar. And that's some of the gamesmanship that goes on, and that's problematic, right? You want each medicine to, in effect, be competing so that if it's a low-cost version, just as efficacious, it's the one that's going to be prescribed. And with the rebates, what they allow is, in effect, a lock-in where, even though systemically it's more expensive, the incentives for that specific institution is varied from that. And those are the things we need to get rid of.
All right, I'm sorry that we're running out of time because we still have questions, but I feel like this last question is so important. If we can sneak in this last question, what can small businesses in Nevada do to ensure their benefit designs and employees offer or have access to lower cost alternatives like biosimilars?
Yeah, well, I think, from a public policy perspective, it's critical that small business owners stay engaged with their elected leaders and with the organizations that advocate on their behalf, like the Latin Chamber of Commerce, right? So you need to go to those who are the decision makers. And in many cases, those are your elected leaders, both at the state and the federal level. So advocate on behalf of these programs. Advocate on behalf of these policy changes that would ensure that getting rid of rebates, or making sure that rebates pass through to the patient, getting rid of spread pricing, putting more transparency in pricing so people know what the actual cost of their drugs are enacted at the state and the federal level. Because ultimately, what happens when we have good public health policy that allows more people to access their medications on a regular basis is that we all benefit. We as employers will see lower insurance premiums. Our employees or our patients will see lower out-of-pocket costs. Both of those things lead to increased medication compliance, which leads to a healthier population, which leads to a more productive workforce, which results in ultimately a more successful business.
I would completely agree. Everything the Congressman said. The only thing I would add is to also push, you see what's on your formulary. And if you don't have biosimilars as the preferred drug on your formulary, ask why. Talk about, can you get a special tier? I mean, you deal with these issues on a regular basis. Engage on it.
I want to thank you so much for such valuable information today. Former Congressman Dr. Joe Heck, and also Senior Fellow in Business Economics, Wayne Weingarten. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
I'd
Maura.
like to have closing statements. I want a closing statement from our congressman. Let's have a closing statement, Congressman.
Closing statement?
Do a closing statement. Come on.
So first, there's no better advocate on behalf of small businesses than this man right here, Peter Guzman. I've had the pleasure of working with him both as an elected official and as a small business owner. And as I said, nobody stands up more for small businesses in this community than this man right here. There's no greater chamber than the Latin Chamber of Commerce. I've been honored to be here for multiple events and presentations. So make sure you support the chamber. If you're watching this and you're not a member, sign up. And that's a free plug. Peter didn't pay me to say that. So I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here to talk about this important issue. And again, thanks to you and all of the AV staff that you have here who made this happen.
Well, I didn't expect those words, but they mean a lot to me. I know how hard you've worked in this community for many years, and I know how much you care about this community. And I always mention my founder, Otto Merida, who really laid down the groundwork for a wonderful chamber, and I'm honored to be carrying the weight of his legacy on my shoulders and doing the best that I can. I'm so grateful today. Grateful to our friends out there that are listening right now. Just grateful that we're able to bring this to you, and hopefully you got something out of it. Like I always say, we want to bring you information. We want to bring you the topics that matter. This topic matters. It matters to our seniors. It matters to our entire community. And so we have to have the knowledge, and the way you get the knowledge is by inviting people to talk about topics that maybe make some uncomfortable, maybe not everybody agrees with, disagrees with, but that is a democracy. That is what democracy looks like, bringing these type of topics here. So with that, I have the honor of closing our first ever live broadcast of the LCC Luncheon, and we will be coming back to you better, stronger than ever. I ask that my community help each other, help us all heal together. Let's show the rest of the country that we have a great governor, we have great senators, great Congress folks, all of our elected officials. We all, at this moment, could care less about the two letters in the alphabet. We care about uniting all of us and helping all of us. I ask you to continue to do that. Look after your neighbor, look after a senior. Let's make sure we get through this stronger than ever. Thank you, and I'll see you at the next one.